and I move. So
All right, everybody, let's welcome
just
Justin
FYI.
and Josh from Russel Marine. Today they're going to talk to you about electronics and everything to do with selecting the right one, maintenance, installation, all that stuff.
Maintenance on electronics? I didn't know there was maintenance on
Guys,
electronics.
switch on that switch on your power and you're good to go. Welcome, everybody.
Nope, not today. Was that good? Everybody hear me?
Everybody doing all right?
I'm Justin Russell. I'm the shorter one.
I'm Josh Schneiter. I'm the big one.
So we are with Russel Marine Products out of El Dorado, Kansas. We are an online retailer and, I guess, brick and mortar for marine electronics. So that's Lowrance, Humminbird, Garmin, encompassing everything from 2D sonar up to live imaging, crappie, bass, catfish, all that fun stuff. So I am not going to get real salesy with you guys today and say, oh, come buy this product. I'm not going to do that. I don't really care to do that. What I want to do is educate you guys on electronics, and hopefully you guys can have a better understanding of it and ultimately put more fish in the boat for you. So as we get to this stuff, if you have questions, please answer. This is what, or ask, I should say, we will answer. This is what Josh and I really, really love to do. Yeah. So we want to be able to educate you guys, have an understanding of electronics, some of the issues that we see in our shop from electronics, from installation aspects, and hopefully set you guys up for success, again, to catch more fish, because that's ultimately what you guys are here for and want to learn. And Josh here is come from the hunting specific background, so it was really fun for us to kind of pair up and partner up to come to these events, because Josh did not have a background in the marine electronics or marine industry, where I really grew up in it and have been in it for a long, long time. So one of the things that I wanted to start off with going up here is what I believe is setting yourself up for success on anything fishing, boating related, and a lot of that starts ever before you leave your house. Whether that's you have electronics, whether it's you're looking toward electronics, there's a lot of research and stuff you can do on electronics before you ever even leave. There's mapping. You can be looking at mapping. You can have an understanding of where fish should be at certain times of the year. Look at your map before you ever leave your house, mark waypoints, and start running to that the second you get on the water. The most important thing that we've had here that has been, I'm not going to say a misconception as much, but what provides people with a lot of issues and a lot of troubles of, I don't like X brand of products, or I don't like this boat because of my issues that I've had with electronics. 9 times out of 10 are not even related to the electronics itself. It's either an installation error, not having the correct power in your boat, whether that's battery, or not having the right amount or gauge wire running to your electronics before you ever even start.
Well, and to interject something there's some specific issues that we see, especially in a lot of the catfish type specific rigs, larger aluminum boats, as opposed to the things we deal with in bass fishing, where you're in sometimes smaller and fiberglass. So you're going to see more chances for interference issues, grounding issues, things like that can happen on an aluminum boat that you might not generally see in a fiberglass boat. Besides that, you're generally looking at longer runs for your wiring. So it's really important to factor in when you're making the decisions of what size of wire you're going to run, what type of wire you're going to run, that you can really avoid those things and set yourself up for success initially. We run only 10 gauge marine grade shielded wire. So that's a copper cord wire that is shielded with tin on the outside of it, and it's marine grade, so it's not going to corrode over time. Those larger gauge wires are going to allow for better amp flow, better voltage consistency, getting to your units, especially up front of your boat. The shielded wire is going to absolutely help with any kind of strange grounding issues or things like that we do see far more often on an aluminum boat and things like that. We've had examples where fairly recently we had an aluminum boat in the shop, and you could test and pull 12 volts off that hole in any position.
The hole itself,
the entire hole was energized with 12 volts. And it came down to, you could feel it when you walked up to it. It would just make your hair stand up on your arm. And what we found was, it was grounding issues. The connections weren't done correctly, and they bump up against the hole, and it energized the whole thing. Talk about interference. You think your sonar's bad or your transducer's having issues. Well, when you have a 25-foot long, 6-foot wide, 12-volt battery, water, you're going to see a little bit of interference on sonar and things like that. So wiring is extremely important. You're doing heat shrink, waterproof butt connectors, or good soldering helps. Yeah, just making sure you have good connections and excellent wire when you're choosing to do that. It's 100% worth it.
Absolutely. You know, the second thing we really run into on that when it comes to power is batteries. So if you're going to call our shop and say, hey, I have an issue with my electronics and it's doing X, or it's turning on and off every time I turn my key on to actually start my engine to move to another place. First thing we're going to ask you is, how do you have it wired? Are you running direct power? Again, direct meaning wire directly from the unit all the way back to your cranking battery. And what size battery do you have and how old is that battery? Now, a lot of our new outboard manufacturers, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Mercury, recommend running a AGM or a lead-acid battery, not a lithium battery for their power consumption. We go a step further and recommend running a Group 31 AGM. Now, I'm a bass guy. I've got 4 units on my boat, a Livescope, all running to that, power poles, live well pumps, all that stuff throughout that. I do not have a battery issue at the end of the day, pre-fishing for 12 or 14 hours a day. We see it a lot of guys, well, it came with this. I've got a 24 series battery. It's not an issue. I haven't had a problem. A year later, well, I noticed my graph is running dimmer in the afternoon. Again, it's a power-related issue. So it's kind of troublesome or frustrating, I should say, on our end if guys are spending, you know, $2,000 on a fish locator, or in some cases, $12,000 on a fish locating system for their boat, and they want to put the cheapest battery in the boat. You're already hindering yourself before you ever leave the house. It has to be powered correctly to get the most efficiency out of it. We've seen side imaging look horrible on units because of bad batteries. We've had networking issues where they won't share points or won't pull up mapping, or one side of my side imaging transducer shows great, the other side doesn't. We already thought, well, maybe it's a transducer. It's not. It's literally related to power, related to battery. It's been never more important now to have the correct power and wiring in a battery.
Yeah, these things they're computers. They are absolutely 100% processing speed based, power consumption needed computers that just happen to be on your boat. So you treat them as such, and they will work for you all the time. You know, it's something to think about when we're talking about larger units, and we see it more often. But even the smaller units, if you guys are running, 7s and 9s and things like that, sure, they're not quite as power hungry. But if you set yourself up from the beginning and have the correct wire, if you do go to upgrade, you're not stripping anything out of your boat and trying to start over from scratch. You start with a good power source. You start with good wiring and a good base. You're going to be covered. You're going to be good, and it'll work years and years and years. If you do, you switch your battery out, but that good marine wiring, she's going to be there. It's going to work out better for you long run.
Oh, what was that, dude? You dropped the camera. And we're back. All right, enough about the boring stuff. So now we're going to get into more of the fun stuff on brands and stuff like that. Who runs Hummingbird? That's more than I thought. Who runs Garmin?
Okay.
Who runs brands?
All right.
Which one's best?
Yeah.
Why? Okay.
Great.
Awesome. Do what?
They do.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. I think from taking a box, putting on the boat, they have the best side image out there on the market today. 100%. You know, it's funny you say that. That's key. It's interesting that you say the user interface. We're hearing more of Garmin and Lowrance. It's like the Ford, Chevy, Dodge argument, right? But I'm going to point to this because I agree with side image quality. Like, it's really, really good. But I'm going to throw an interjection here. None of it matters. I don't care what you have. If you're not willing to take the time to learn your unit and get out and utilize it, why spend money on it, truthfully? we always recommend it's cool to see the stuff in the shop. It's cool to see it on demo mode. Go out to the lake, take a day, leave your rods at home. Go to places on the lake that you have an understanding of. I know there is some here, rough pile, I don't care what it is. Understand what it is to a point where you see it consistently on imaging. You can make a waypoint on it. You can consistently turn back around and refine that piece of structure and help you with that efficiency. It's really worth the time to take that early on. If it's a bad fishing day, or you're getting out really early in the season, you're not truly planning on fishing, take time to learn your products. You can always go back and do a factory restore, default functions on the graph, and do that. It's like people going and buying a $3,000 laptop to send emails. You don't have to do that. You can use a cell phone now. You can use a lot cheaper. You can use an iPad. Same thing you see in our industry. We have guys spending $15,000 for install and will do nothing more than power on a unit and operate. They have so much more capability than what we ever had in the past. And it really helped put a lot more fish in the boat, especially when you start talking about live image, active target, Mega Live, Livescope, man. It's pretty damn incredible what can be done or what you can hunt or find with this stuff. I'm not trying to say I thought I knew it all a few years ago, but I thought I was pretty confident on what some structure was or what it looks like. And then you start seeing it with side imaging or Livescope. And I mean, there's stuff recently on a lake that I've fished for the past 20 years that I never knew a 400-yard long fence row came into the lake and made a hard bend. If you guys watched any of our videos, we kind of reference that quite a bit because it looks really good on imaging. But it's really, really interesting to see that stuff and find where the breaks are in that fence, because it's a perfect funnel for fish to come in and out of. It's really neat to be able to utilize with that.
Yeah, like when he's talking about learning your units, and with Garmin, Lowrance, it's funny. To me, I think Garmin's the easiest interface. Justin, Lowrance is the easiest interface.
Now, I've run Lowrance for 20 years, so it's easy for me. I look at a hummingbird, and it's like looking at Japanese to me. It's completely foreign.
When I started in the marine industry, I had ran Garmin handhelds in the mountains, and that's comfortable for me. And so when I got into the Garmin interface, that's what was easiest for me. He made a good talk about me being from hunting. And, when I catfish, there's different opinions. So bass guys get real mad when you eat them, not the guy, the bass. So I love the catfish. I love the crappie fish.
Especially as tournament guys.
Yeah. Don't do it that often. But when you go in and you're taking these things and you're looking at it from a hunting perspective, that's how I see the lens of fishing. That's what I do it through. It's something that I love. Fish tacos. I love fish tacos. I love to deer hunt, and I love eating deer heart tacos.
We're very lucky to have Josh here this week because of deer hunting. So
that's true. It's kind of a good weekend. But so if I'm going to go deer hunting, I'm going to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, and one arrow is going to go through a deer ear, maybe a few does it, Same thing fishing, guys. If you take the time, you practice with your electronics, you're going to find what you need to find. You're going to get the settings you need to before you throw the line out and hook that fish. It's in the game of trying to get lucky and trying to find one using sound principles. It's practice, practice, practice. So when you do go out to the lake, especially a new body of water, if you have principles of, okay, I've experienced these water conditions before, even though I've not been on the lake. I've experienced river channels that look like this before, even though I haven't been on this lake. You know how to set your unit like that, and you can go to work. And that's the importance of spending that practice and learn your settings and learn how to do it, because every single thing, water clarity, current, all of those things are going to change how you set up your sonar, whether it be 2D or anything else, running different depths. You don't run the same frequency on side imaging at any depth or any spread. You want to tune that in. It's of paramount importance. I promise you, you can spend 1 8-hour day on the water with your rods in the truck, and you will learn more than you will learn in 6 months of fishing and trying to run your electronics. It's absolute fact.
The sonar becomes your eyes under the water. So when we talk about this is why I really like working with Josh. He brings the deer hunting aspect of, a deer is going to walk down that creek bed and come right through here and follow that. A bass, a catfish, a crappie is going to do the same thing under the water. I'm relying on those electronics to see that depression, or I'll be looking at perspective mode on Livescope a lot to see where that creek channel is bending across this mud flat. And here's a little rock pile over here. understanding what that is and what that does makes you more efficient as an angler. And it's changed a lot over the years. It's changed from 2D sonar. It's changed with side imaging. It's changed with down imaging. And now live imaging. I've learned way more on live imaging than I ever thought I would. And that has, from a fish behavior standpoint, let alone catching aspect of it, if you guys come and say, hey, I want to buy a Livescope, anything live imaging, I'm going to tell you, go home and go crappie fishing with it first thing. I did not grow up fishing. I grew up bass fishing and bass tournament fishing, and I was down. I'm very passionate about it. But I really like to go crappie fishing because you go crappie catching, not fishing with live imaging. Watch that fish behavior on any of the live active target live. It truly doesn't matter. So we've experienced this multiple times. You go out there and you see a pile of fish in and above the brush pile. You just take a crappie and drop it down, and they just scatter like flies everywhere. Like, well, I've got wrong color lure, wrong size lure, too big a line. There's something going on that's leading you as to why the fish are not there. Previously, I would have idled over it, marked fish, went around fish day point. Well, hell, maybe that was just the brush pile I saw, or maybe I wasn't sure that was there. Or the opposite happens. You go drop that crappie jig down there, and they come out and down and biting. It'll be a good day. We're going to be done in about an hour, So it's help with efficiencies, it's help with stuff, but understanding that fish behavior has made me kind of question and think on how I'm setting up my lure presentation. How is that piece of structure laid out? Not from an understanding or a standpoint of how am I going to catch fish is, if that piece of structure is facing you guys, the tree branch or aiming your direction, I don't want to go back here casting and come against the tree branches are coming. If I can't fish it, depending on the wind or the current, I'm going to be on the opposite way, and I want my lure coming forward through the tree branches, get hung up less. It's just a stand of that, of going from a very frustrating day. Again, applying, as Josh said, some common sense principles behind that. But when it really starts to click, I mean, we've had guys come to the show and tell us, you guys, there's 400 fishies clean this year, mostly in crappie. But again, the fish catch ratio gone up exponentially because of the electronics.
My favorite fish story on Livescope. I don't know how your friend here, Noah Merlin Johnson, is Noah Merlin Johnson. Right, know him? Yeah, good dude. He was talking about step over the top of a blue on Livescope and working that fish for over an hour before finally hooked it. And he's working a 60-pound fish in Livescope. That's rare, guys. That's something that's different. That's not something, especially in catfish, you do that often. Sitting here working like a crappie, and he worked it and worked it and worked. And I saw the pictures. It's a hell of a fish. There's tools and there's outside of the box idea you can use with these things. Again, it's not just crappie fishing. It's not just for bass fishing. The idea when you start applying these different principles that are successful for other things, and you really start to think of it in a multi-species context, you can really unlock some cool stuff, some really innovative stuff.
So again, I'm going to pick you out of the crowd here. Yeah, elbow. Hi. So you brought up the fact that you're used to humming products, so it's easier for you, and that's absolutely what I recommend. So if you would call shop and say, hey, I'm looking to add this boat, what do you recommend? If you've run Humminbird products for a long time, I'm not going to have you go off in the deep end and run something for them. We're going to try to get something you're comfortable with, or something where friends or buddies are running that sort of product. So there's a lot of different variables within this, but this also goes to show, regardless of what brand run, they're all pretty damn good. They really, really are. Anymore with Mega Live hitting the market now, they're all going to have a checkbox of decent side imaging images, decent GPS mapping, 2D sonar, side imaging, down imaging, and now live imaging. Be willing to take the time to learn whatever program you have. We've had people over the years call us and say, I don't like Humminbird, or I don't like Lowrance. I need this. I need that. The next year I'm changing to Garmin. I'm changing to this brand. I need this. It's not the brand of electronics that make the difference. It's you, the individual, running the brand of electronics that makes the difference. Sometimes Josh and I get into arguments out on the boats. Different color palettes for me resonate and show things better for me than they do for him. I probably need glasses, but don't wear them. Josh wears glasses. So we'll get out there on certain conditions, and we're on muddy El Dorado Lake. 99% of our filming is done on, and we can get some really, really good imaging returns. But there's 3 color palettes I really like on Garmin or Lowrance, and there's 3 or 4 that he completely likes differently than me. What you guys don't see is we've got 2 units mounted on the dash, and one's in my colors so I can see, and one's in his so he can see and interpret what we're looking at. But it doesn't always have to be about settings. Out of the box, ready to rock. Each manufacturer has told us countless times, we want it working really, really good out of the box because we want people to have a good experience. We know people don't always like to tinker with stuff. I like to tinker with stuff. Josh likes to tinker with stuff. We have another guy at the shop that does not like to tinker with stuff. He wants to plug and play, turn it on, and go catch fish.
Well, he's got a Helix and it beeps too much when he pushes buttons. So. It's fun. You don't hear it, and he's absolutely right. And all you guys can be different, and that's what we're talking about: spending the time and learning your settings. You know, when we're on the boat, again on YouTube stuff, if you watch it, we're talking about things. What you don't hear is off camera. It's like, how the hell? I don't even see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Explain it to me, because we'll see completely different things, and there's different things for, again, our eyes or how we're interpreting things. You guys are all going to be different. You're not going to see the same stuff. When you're looking at settings, there's a few things that are the right answer. It's the thing that should be at least really close to it. But there's a vast majority of things that you can set on units that it's only the right answer if it's your right answer. It's only going to work if it's you looking at it. So, I mean, it's things that, it makes a big difference.
Some of the basic stuff that we go over when we try to educate people on things, on your 2D sonar stuff, I'm messing with sensitivity for the day, and I'm looking at contrast more than anything else. Now, Humminbird may call it something different. Garmin calls it some things that are different, some different jargon. But realistically, again, very muddy, silty situations, El Dorado Lake, because that's where we spend a lot of our time doing our filming. We're going to dial that sensitivity down. There's more trash in the lake, more stuff floating by. We'll hear customers say, I copied my buddy's settings. Why is his so much more clear than mine? Well, your buddy lives in Able. There's 30 foot of visibility. He doesn't have trash in the lake and debris and stuff floating through. You're on El Dorado Lake with 2 inch visibility. You're not going to as good a returns as to what he is, just because of the lake conditions. So you have to have some understanding that different bodies of water, general rule of thumb, the clearer the water is, the better the images or the better returns you're going to get. The muddy the water, the worse you're going to get. When we're in shallow water, graphing around, if on side imaging, if you have a higher frequency, you're going to get more detail, but you're not going to be scanning out as far. So I may approach a new lake that I haven't been before, and I say, hey, the bass are going to be up on the flats generally this time of year. I want to find some structure, whether that's rock bank, road bed, brush pile, tree. I'm going to be scanning at a lower frequency, generally 800, looking around, marking things that I find, going back over with a higher frequency, checking out and investigating more. Oh, that's not what I thought, or that's just a bank. There's nothing really special. There's not a rock transition over here. That's a really defined brush pile. It's been deep enough water. It looks big enough to hold fish. I'm erasing all my other waypoints, but I'm going to come back and investigate that with live imaging, or I may just say I'm going to come back and fish it. Years ago, and I'm going to bring up Lowrance as an example because I've worked with Lowrance a long time when I was trying to fish professionally on the bass circuits. Lowrance used to say, and they've all done this over the years as well too, when side imaging first came out, you're going to be more efficient. You're going to idle past the point. You're going to mark some stuff on there that you find structure or fish and come back and fish it. I have now found out with live imaging that Josh and I have done this on El Dorado. We will idle past something like, there's not really much there. We're going to keep going. We'll use side imaging. We may have waypointed it and wanted to come back later and see. Well, we've now gone back with that with Livescope and Active Target and Mega Live and said, well, we're looking down there. There's still nothing there. We'll flip a jig in there, whether it's crappie jig, bass jig, doesn't matter, and literally watch 4 or 5 fish come out of that bush or that piece of structure and come down. As good as the technology is, I still recommend fishing some of those pieces of structure. You can have fish so tight to some of that structure that you still can't see them. It's still a challenge at some of those points on some of those lakes. We went ice fishing last year, first time ever, which I highly recommend that. That was a lot of fun.
Have any of you guys done that? Are you guys big ice fishermen, any of you?
You ever done ice fishing with Livescope? Do it. It's a blast.
Okay, it's scary.
No,
to tell you, it's scary.
So back up the premises here. You have to tell the story as to why it's so scary.
Yeah, so we went up to Lake of the Woods, and
never done this before.
It's right on the Canadian border, and just from physics, I know I'm going to fall through first before he does. So that's a little scary. But we're going out there, and they come out, and
we're in geo trackers in wooden trailers with propane heaters in the front of these. This trailer is no longer than this table.
Yeah.
There's 4 of us in this trailer.
4.
4 of us. First day, we took a guy that's been ice fishing a lot that's from up north. And he thought it was funny to start cracking jokes about ice cracks, ice bridges. Learned about ice bridges. They're a real thing. We slow down. Very first morning out there. We've never again been this before. We booked this in like September or October.
Mm-hmm.
Get up there, see this river that we're going to go out on, and then the main lake of the woods. And we get in this really crappy home-built wooden trailer. And we start getting out on the ice. And we make it about 100 yards and come to a stop.
Well, before that, our northern guide friends, as he's shutting us in this wooden coffin, goes, "Lucky day, boys. It's our first day driving the trucks out."
No shit. It's the first day the ice was thick enough to take trucks out on the ice. Great. Welcome to Canada, right? Awesome. So we get in this ice thing, and we kind of start bucking a little bit, and we come to a stop. And we realize we haven't been out very far. And we're like, oh, we're already to the ice shacks. This is awesome. So Josh opens the back door and looks out. There's no ice shacks around. And these little, like, Isuzu Trooper trucks are just taking more of these little trailers out on the ice. The guide gets out. I was like, man, did you guys feel that? We just started backfiring, sputtering. But here in about 20 minutes, we got another one of these trucks coming down the line, okay? So just stay in there where the heater is. Like, great, this is awesome. Been here 10 minutes. We get in this, we take all our camera equipment out, all our gear out, switch everything over this other trailer. We make it about another mile, and we see this orange glow as we're coming up. And we're trying to peer out a very small window, so we're all 4 of us cramming our heads trying to see it. One of those wooden trailers is on fire. And there's 4 guys standing out there with all their gear, and here comes another Isuzu Trooper down the hill. And it's like, well, the ice will melt and put that out, so that's cool. That's awesome. Next 100 feet or so, we start going over an island, and we hit what's an ice bridge. They have metal contraptions that you drive over to go over cracks in the ice, and they're not like, they're 4-foot wide cracks that you see water in that you go over. So our camera guy doesn't even like riding in boats, has his hand on the back door at any time because apparently he thought he would just jump out and not be sucked under the ice. So long story short, we finally get out there. We calmed down enough, had a little bit of liquid courage, go ice fishing, and had an absolute blast out there. And there's literally thousands of these ice sacks out there on the ice, and it was an absolute blast. We highly recommend going to do that. Caught a bunch of walleye, saugeye.
And if you stuck with us through this very fun yet completely irrelevant to catfishing story, I'll tie it in now. And it's that you have a Livescope and you're looking through a fixed point, you're looking through a hole. There's separation for fish in the bottom.
Yeah.
It's hard to see. But again, if you're using live imaging, if you've got something that's hugging the bottom really hard, you can find it. If you spend some time, you're going to see an outline, and it's going to look like a shadow. And then you'll see the shadow move. And it's just like it looks like it's something crawling through the mud of the bottom of the lake, but you can find it. And you can do this with very small fish.
Oh, yeah.
And catfish, you can absolutely see them like that. Like
Another
tools that from ice fishing, think outside of the box. You can apply it to about anything you want.
One of the craziest tools that I really only use, again, I don't go catfishing a lot, bass fisherman, but one of the really coolest settings that we've got on Livescope. I haven't seen it on Mega Live. I have yet to see it on Active Target. It's called Trails on Livescope. And what it basically does is it shows a disturbance in the water of fish. It'll show, it almost looks like a heat signature is what it really looks like when it comes off. If you have something hard on the bottom and moves, you're going to see it. You will see the disturbance of the water behind it. And we've got a couple of units over here we can put on demo mode, show you guys if you want to come over to the booth as well too. But man, it is really, really cool to be able to see that stuff. I know him and I both get kind of giddy like little school kids when we're starting to argue over trying to catch fish and stuff like that on some of our filming days. But it's really, really neat to see how far we've come along with technology when it's utilized correctly, when you're trying to work hard to understand it and how to catch more fish. And 100%, if you take the time to understand, we'll put more fish in that boat for you guys, without a doubt.
Do you guys have questions on anything specific? Any of you have anything electronics related, installation related, anything like that that we can answer up here and help some of the people on the camera? Or you can always come up to the booth also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't. I left the adapter at the shop, so that's my bad. But we have a couple of videos, and the trails feature he was talking about, we actually do have a YouTube video that goes over that and discusses that.
It does. It absolutely does.
And that's something that, especially if you're in a river, because it's current and it's gonna cloud up off of any kind of structure down there. It's gonna throw it off. What you end up doing is, and what I've done with it, and I've used it a fair amount, is if you're in a place that you have a fairly consistent current, that signature that comes off is going to get consistent. And what you do, you just look for what sticks out. So you end up playing Where's Waldo with the signatures, as opposed to concentrating on all the mess. You will see something that's moving faster. It's moving a different direction. It's moving something like that. And you just concentrate for that, as opposed to trying to find the target within all that mess, and it just takes some time. But once your eyes adjust to it, back to hunting again, sorry, if I'm looking at a tan hillside and I'm trying to spot out looking for a tan deer, once your eyes adjust to it, and it takes you a minute, you can start picking it out, and you can do the same thing with trails.
The big thing with Livescope that we found that's been so helpful is if you I don't like running Livescope specifically on auto settings, because what happens is your range will auto adjust and your depth auto adjust. Well, then the size of your fish also auto adjust. So it's very difficult to size fish when you've got your screen doing this, going up and down, you can't pick it up. When you set that, I'm scanning at first with Livescope 70 feet. And then when I see something close, I'm going to dial that thing as close as I can to get 30 feet. You can start crappie, have an understanding of fish that should be a bass, or here comes a gar, it's long and skinny, that's a catfish. There's a video that we did we were actually working on a comparison video of active target versus Livescope, and we were filming this with Livescope at the time, and we're watching just a bass lure, a tube of mine drop down, and we're on a submerged tree, and you watch about 3-foot long blobs come off the bottom. Those are blue cats. And it was, we almost quit fishing and went back to the shop and grabbed different gear to go back, because that's something we don't experience a lot on El Dorado. There's not a lot of big blue cats in El Dorado. So to see that, but you could clear as day. There's 3 underneath the log coming up, saw the disturbance and knew immediately what it was. As time goes on, and again, I don't want to keep saying, time on the water, but really nothing beats time on the water. I mean, there are guys that are out there. You want to know why they're always in the top 10? Because they're that damn good. They're not lucky. They know what they're doing. They put themselves to have the right opportunities. When stars align, they're in the best place they can be. But sizing those fish has been so helpful to us. And man, I mean, 2 years ago, we were out sizing fish. We're like, oh, look at that one. I dropped a Senko down there, which is only 4 inches long. And I'm like, shit, my Senko's as big as a fish. And I hooked it, and it was about a 4-inch long fish. But you can get to that sizing. You can get to within a pretty good grasp of, okay, I'm at a deep creek channel. The lake has this species of fish in it. That looks like a gar. That's probably a walleye. That's probably a catfish. It'll start clicking the more you really look at it and stuff to do. But there's possibilities and stuff. Again, I can't, not from a cocky standpoint. I thought after fishing 20 years and trying to fish professionally, I had a pretty good grasp of electronics. And then live imaging and Livescope came out. I was not an early adopter of Livescope, by the way. I really was not. But now utilizing it for literally education, learning, structure, layout, man, I've learned so much more about fishing, and I've had a lot more fish catches. My kids have a hell of a lot more fun with it. I mean, I don't know how else you can get as close to video game fishing with Livescope and having a crappie rod in your hand, man. Like, that is as close as you can get to video game fishing that I've been able to find.
Not to mention chucking cast nets with it's fun.
The catfish guys that we deal with on Milford Lake in the mornings, they have it on perspective mode. They're not looking for structure. They're looking for shad. So,
yeah.
So I know just from talking to several of our guys that, hey, we're out on Milford Lake during the summer. We're idling around a lot. If you get too close to the shad, they know they're coming. They get spooky. They know you're trying to throw a net on. If you pass over them, you're not going to have a chance. I do not, from a bass fishing perspective, I can tell you in my personal experience, the fish know you're there way more than we realize. And our boats, trolling motors, electronics pinging over the top of them, I don't care if they're in 30 feet of water, they know you're there. They really, really do. I like to mark fish on side imaging way more than down imaging. Because if I see them on down imaging, I am damn near right on top of them, and they know I'm there. I like to be a lot sneakier. I'm way more quiet with the trolling motor. You can go out crappie fishing. We experienced this firsthand with a Garmin employee who invented Livescope and developed it on Hillsdale Lake. And he set me up to prove a point, but we were out crappie fishing and we were in 20 feet of water. I was 20 feet away from a brush pile. I hit the prop to engage, the button on the trolling motor pedal to engage the prop, and I was on like 20% on a trolling motor. And me barely touching it to correct the boat spooked those fish out of the brush pile. And it took a minute of not touching that trolling motor to have those fish come back in. They knew we were there, and they know you're messing with them.
Away from live imaging for a second. So we have a question from the live stream, and gentleman was asking, he's got an older Humminbird unit, a 997, and a new Lowrance, and he's talking about interference. So this is something that we haven't covered at all yet. That's really kind of cool. The idea of your frequencies we touched on in the bit. So if you have different units and you have two side imaging units that you want to run at the same time, as long as your frequencies are far enough apart, they won't interfere theoretically.
Correct.
If an older 997, I think they maxed out at 800. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, and the newer,
that was one of the very first side imaging units available.
So it's running at like 800 hertz. You've got a Lowrance. If it's a newer Lowrance transducer, it's around 1,000-ish.
455 and 800.
Yeah. So if you are running side imaging and you want to run two units, even if they're in the same brand, as long as you're not on the same frequency, you can run those at the same time. And the cool thing there, if you're running two screens and you're moving through water that's of varying depth, often. So if you're running reservoirs and stuff like that, they stay kind of consistent. But if you're on a river where you're dropping in and out of holes and things like that, and the water levels are changing constantly, if you want to set a lower frequency on one transducer, you're going to get greater range out of that. So the lower the frequency, the further out you can see. The higher the frequency, the clearer it will be, but the closer you have to be to get that definition. So when people think of like mega side imaging, things like that, there's a diminishing return on distance off of that.
100%.
If you start trying to use that 1100 hertz and try to reach really far, it's going to be less clear than using 800 hertz. So it's kind of hard. It seems like, okay, if it's mega plus, I'm going to use that always. Reality is you want to dial it back and use a lower frequency if you really want to stretch out. So to answer that question, if you want to run those, as long as the frequency is far enough apart, and with those two, it is, you should not have interference between those two side imaging units at the same time.
And to kind of play devil's advocate on there, I would question, if he's got a new enough Lowrance unit, there's no real reason to even have that Humminbird side imaging running unless he's got a specific mapping on it. I actually, about a decade ago now, would specifically run a Humminbird unit next to my Lowrance unit, and the only reason for that was the Lake Master mapping because it was so good. But as everything evolves with new technology coming, we really have a Ford, Chevy, Dodge case now. For the past 3 years, though, we've rigged up a ton of boats of I have all Lowrance, but I want Livescope, or I have all Humminbird, but I want Livescope. Now we're seeing with Mega Live coming out of, well, I want all Humminbird plus the Mega Live. Now I want all Lowrance and Active Target. Now I want all Garmin and this. Or Garmin mapping is better in my region versus what Lowrance is. Or Humminbird mapping is better in my region than what Lowrance is. So there's a lot of different variables of just XYZ because of XYZ. It depends on each individual person in your area, what you prefer, and the reasons why with that. So it's been fun for us to watch this evolution come. It's been fun for us to be able to play with some of this new product stuff because, again, for me, I can't tell you where it's headed. The possibilities are endless, but man, I've caught way more fish utilizing electronics than I did 30, 40 years ago when it was really, really basic stuff. And it's taken some fun days out on the water and really, really made them great. It's been a lot of fun. We have equally had some very frustrating days when you watch the fish watch your lure, not it, and that's been frustrating. But at least you're around fish at that point, right? So.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Sorry, we'll get you. Yeah.
You'll never be
There's always an advantage to having live imaging. Always. We are in a mud 2-inch visibility lake in the summertime. Very, very bad.
Settings based.
I'm also trying to say this without frustrating people, but Mega Live is not the best product out on the market for live imaging. I personally rank it as the third place when it comes to live imaging on the market. Seeing what we've seen firsthand, doing some of our filming and comparison stuff on it, it'll show you brush piles and stuff, but not as good a detail that we've seen with Active Target or Livescope on that stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to the mapping program on my Hummingbird, I was under the impression I could share that with my buddy, and we could build that. Is that the case?
There is. Are you talking like the Auto Chart Live, where you're filming your own mapping and things like that because it's saved to the SD? Yes. Now,
sorry, it's a bit of a trick to it. So you have to download it into your computer, and I think there's ways you can merge those. God, we have a hard expert because one of us are.
No. And honestly, it's not on any of them. It's been a struggle with Lowrance on their live, as well as the Garmin stuff also.
Can be done, but we do it. Afterwards, if you want to give us your number, I'll have my Hummingbird guy call you Monday, and he can get you squared away on that. Yeah. You got one? Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, it's really good.
Catfish especially, we see using that a lot. If you got things, so to understand what 360 is, it is side imaging. It's just spinning in a circle.
Yeah. It's like radar. It's constantly updating. It's constantly sweeping around. I can't remember the rate of return on that. I want to say like a 20-second sweep, if you will. That's what's standard.
And what the cool thing there, if on side imaging, obviously seeing a fixed image as you pass it by, right? The idea of 360, you're still seeing a fixed image, so it's always in the past, but you're seeing it in a better relationship of how it's moving. So if you move past a set of fish, you're not going to notice on side imaging, and really a lot because of the scale you're looking at, what direction that thing's swimming. With 360 or Mega 360, you can get a really good idea of, if you want to target a specific fish, you can see, or a school of fish, what direction they're moving in relationship to your boat. So
and that's without having to have like a live imaging transducer that you're manually moving on your own. This 360 is doing the scanning for you as well.
So you can adjust that way. You can run them down that way. If you want to do like seek and destroy style fishing, you can absolutely do that, or schools of shad or anything else. But as you see that return, you're going to see it changing position on
where
your
the
screen.
360 is really important. If you guys are bumping down a river, you're going to see something on 2D sonar that pops up, but that 360 range is going to show you a piece of structure or a dip or a valley well before you get to it to prepare for it. Same thing what guys are saying when you're bumping down as well too. Okay, there's a piece of structure coming. I may need either pull planer boards in or out, or I may need to adjust my lines on this side to not get snagged up before you end up hitting it. And as Josh said, you're going to see, okay, I'm coming up to a group of shad. I'm going to keep my eyes on this specific part of it. As it's sweeping further out, it will show it on that 360 before you would see it on 2D sonar.
Does that help you there? Okay.
We see a lot of guys that kind of pair that 360 up with some sort of live imaging. 360 mostly showing the structure phase of it, where the live imaging comes into play and what's real time of actual fish movement in that instant, reacting, watching lures, and that sort of stuff.
You guys got about 5 minutes left. Any last questions for Josh and Justin?
I got a Helix 15.
Yeah. Okay.
And on the left side on my side imaging, I got to raise that motor up.
Yeah.
It seems like more so than my 1199.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got a bigger transducer. You've got a bigger transducer with crystals that are shooting out wider and at different angles than what you previously had with the unit you had before. So you will see that.
Do you have any opportunity to try to move it further down on your pull to get it lower. Okay,
Sure.
gotcha. Yeah.
There are
Prop
some boat
sometimes
designs
prop
that we've
wash.
run into at the shop that unfortunately are just that way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, truth be told, we've seen it more on Catfish rigs than we have on any other specific style of boat, especially pod related. Sometimes we'll get interference on pod, ping ponging back and forth. They come across generally as like 3 lines, where our
Yeah.
sonar is pinging back and forth between the pods and our jack plates as well too.
That's, you know, right. Well, it's your prop wash, right? So as your prop's tearing up that water, it's off to the left-hand side of that transducer. So the shallower the water, the more pronounced the disturbance is. And deeper water, it has time to dissipate more quickly. Where it's shallow water, it's bounce, 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 and it's gonna be more washed out when you do it that way. So yeah. You had
You
another?
know one?
Yeah. Theoretically, yes. I mean, the Lake Master chips are very solid, and it depends regionally too. but-
It's a really a regional case-by-case basis. So just a quick background, a lot of times that when they develop mapping systems, it doesn't always mean they're going and doing a sonar log of the lake. Now, Garmin has a mapping boat, Humminbird has a mapping boat, and Lowrance all have mapping boats where they're putting boats out on the water. They're doing sonar logs and converting those depths over to create some mapping. But they don't do that for every single lake. There's not enough boats, not enough time. So some of them are old land surveys that they're pulling up on things. Some of them are marking if the land survey was incorrect where the road is, your map chip will be incorrect where the road is on sometimes. Some of our, I'm going to say crazy professional bass anglers, they will run all 3 brands of products on their boats to find differences in the mapping, and then go to that section and scan it themselves with their own sonar to see where that difference actually is to waypoint that. And for them, at their professional level, what they do, it's completely worth it. It really is.
Do you remember that company? Sorry, internal discussion on stage. Do you remember do you remember that company that Brett got that map from of El Dorado? Do you remember the name of it? It was local-ish. So, yeah, again, we can get your number and look this up. But one of the guys at the shop, so we're at El Dorado all the time, right? There's a local map company that actually created a map chip that will read on his Lowrance unit that's pre-flood of El Dorado Lake. So it is an old survey that shows still the buildings, all the structures,
The foundations,
roads,
the fences that we found.
railroad tracks, everything. And he can actually pull that up on his unit on the water. And it's relatable. He can superimpose like light contour lines over
It
it. He
looks
doesn't
like
shade
Google
it.
Earth overlay, basically.
Yeah,
is what
but
it
it's
looks
from
like.
decades ago. And there are some that, when you think about that, if you're going to add a map card, it may not always be the right thing to just instantly jump to the manufacturer. There's some really good, like boutique style, specialty style map companies.
Texas is very known for custom lanes on how to run certain things. Like Lake Fork, for example, there's a lot of boat lanes on it. There are very niche specific map creators or map chip creators have boat lanes marked on where it's safe to run, navigate, and stuff like that.
And the thing is, they're generally not much more expensive, if any at all. So it's something that it's to research and look into. Some of those maps are really, really cool.
Where do you fish? Where are you from? Okay. I fish Truman quite a bit. Love that lake from a bass fishing standpoint. So understand that can be a nasty lake to run. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I fished at 20 feet high and I fished at 11 feet low. And then I was like, oh, crap, I run through there. Yeah, maybe I'll second guess that next time. Yeah, absolutely. That lake's captured a lot of lower units over the years. So.
All right, we got time for one more question.
What was that?
How long have you been running the company?
Oh, man. So, long story, I started the company with my dad when I was 15 years old because we had a cool product idea and it failed miserably, but I didn't give up. So, long story short, I was well known. Never started on BA so basic right out of college, and I wanted to be a professional fisherman. I realized, man, being gone like 30 weeks out of the year away from home all the time sucks. I got burned out. So, but long story short, when I'd be in like, we would be down fishing or river system also in Mississippi where we have boat locks that we'd run through, and we fish all these little backwater bayous and these cool little lakes and stuff off the river. A lot of guys would be like, hey, you're the Lowrance guy. Can you help me set up my units? I would end up 8 or 9 boats away from my boat helping set up guys select the correct transducer on their unit, make sure they were using the right transducer to begin with, because people didn't know back then. This was probably about 15, 20 years ago. And then one guy said, why don't you just sell this stuff? You know everything about it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I started selling the stuff. And then in 2013, I quit my full-time job, went hard into this with my wife, and grew this to now 12, 15 employees. And we have a lot of fun.
We do.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We get to go do stuff like this, meet all you people. Yeah.
Let's give Justin a round of applause.
If you guys have any questions, our booth is right over there. Again, we are happy to answer all questions, any brands today, tomorrow, next week. Call us at the shop. That's what we do.
Well, tomorrow if you call them.
Yeah, email us, call.
Oh, don't
Social
call
media.
us tomorrow. Nobody will be there. Monday.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Stairs are this way.
I can jump down this way. I can also turn my mic off.